Bonjour mes amis, et bienvenue en Pendu dans le Cercle de Lune. Hello friends, if this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. Friends, if you are a returning visitor, you surely know from my attempt at a French introduction that this is my series in which I use Terre de Marseille adjacent, and antique Italian decks to help me explore the central message from my larger weekly spread. And I've done my larger weekly spread for this week. And if you haven't seen that, I'll put a card up here for you to hop on over and take a look at that so that you get the context from which this spread is being laid and read. Because the question that I ask for this spread is, what is the central message from this week's Ace of Wands spread? My weekly spread up until now, for the last few lunar cycles, has been a spread based on the Ace of Wands. So that's what I call it. What is the central message of this week's Ace of Wands spread? So if you haven't seen that, you might not know why this answer came out the way it came out. So take a look at it. If you have seen it, but it's been a while, let me just remind you that I called that spread, I called that video for this week, Transition to Our Passionate Ascent. Now we're transitioning from the end of the descent into matter with the wet way, which culminates with Cancer, to the ascent back into unification with Spirit, and that begins with Leo. So we're here at the transition from Cancer to Leo, and we're here at the transition between the wet way and the dry way. We're here in a transition between a lot of water and a lot of fire in our lives, in the situation that we're living in the way that we're being in the world. And according to that last spread, the water that we're coming out of has gotten a little murky-mucky. And so we were advised to do some cleanup. And part of that cleanup involved gratitude for how we got into that murky water. That was a good thing. We've used a lot of our spiritual energy to move into fullness of matter, and now we're here, it's a little bit dirty, and we want to do a little bit of cleanup so that we can rise clean from matter back into union with the divine, with a powerful, creative, leonine, passionate energy. That's what this week's spread was talking about. And so it's a big message, it's a powerful message. We were asked to be clever about what we're doing, to be witty, but also to be cooperative, charming, to win people over with our innate sense of mercurial cleverness. We all have Mercury in us. Whether we have full open access to it or not, we've all got Mercury in our charts. So we're asked to reinvent ourselves, to discover our Mercury power in this week's chart so that we can fulfill our solar leonine potential, if that makes sense. That's kind of what this week's spread was talking about, and yet some clarity could be beneficial. So what am I going to do? I'll show you the question. It's really short. I just told you I'll show it to you in text. Then I'll show you the cards that came out in response to that question, and then we'll talk about the cards. Here we go. Do you know this deck? This is a brand new deck to my library, and it's a deck that I had been waffling on for about a year or more, and I finally said, yes, I really want it. And this is kind of like a touch art style of deck, but it is, okay, be patient with me. If you are a traditional purist, you will look at this deck and say, what the ever-loving fuck, that is not a Tarot de Marseille deck. I understand. But I am not you. And to me, while this is not a traditional Tarot de Marseille deck, it is very close to being a very near kissing cousin to a Tarot de Marseille deck. Yeah? Especially when you look at the minors. The minors are almost exactly Tarot de Marseille. The court cards are very sketchy, but you can see the elements that a lot of us read when we look at a Tarot de Marseille court card in the cards for this deck. Now, the major arcana is very different. Sometimes there aren't even any people in the major arcana cards. But still, I can still see what I need to see to read Tarot de Marseille with this deck. So for me, personally, this is Tarot de Marseille, very close adjacent. And it's gorgeous. It's a lovely deck. And I love the backs too. I don't often show the backs deliberately, but I love the backs of this deck. This is called the Talisman Tarot. Yeah, it's a Talisman Tarot that is available on Etsy. I think that's where I bought it. I'll put a link to where you can get it in the description box below. It's not cheap. The cardstock is a little bit stiff-ish. It's new, so that might be part of it. It's a little bit stiff-ish, but it's not painful to shuffle. It's almost a standard size tarot card. Yeah, the corners are a little less round than most tarot cards, but it's basically the same size as a US Games tarot card. But it's a lovely deck. And I love the colors. I love the darkness of it. I love the art style. I hope you do too. If you do, let me know in the comments below. If you don't, if you looked at it and you said, I hate that, let me know in the comments below. If you have the deck, tell me how you work with it. Do you read it like Tarot de Marseille as I would, or do you read it differently? I'd love to know. Anyways, we're going into the reading right now. And you saw from left to right, we had the King of Swords, we had the World, and then we had the Eight of Swords. And the World and the Eight of Swords cards echo each other, right? In this deck. Because if you look at the shapes, do you see what I'm saying? Yeah? We have this oval shape with the lemniscate in the center. We have the oval shape with the flower in the center. They echo each other very closely. The King of Swords is a gorgeous card. I love the colors on this guy. We see the direction that the king is facing. Can you see that? Can you see where if the face had been there, the face is facing off this way? Can you see that? I can read court card with this very easily. So the king for me was facing into the spread. There were no humans facing out of the spread, so the three cards seemed complete. Now they didn't ask me. I could have said, well, where is the king coming from? But I didn't feel like that was necessary for this spread. So we got the World in the center, we have the King of Swords and the Eight of Swords on the sides. Which makes me think that the central card is the central card of the spread. So, this is, I think, where we're going to land. The World. But how do we get there? I think how we get there is a balancing of the King of Swords and the Eight of Swords. Does that make sense? So let's begin with the King of Swords, because he's on the left. King of Swords, gorgeous card. head over heart. Now, the King of Swords is the thinker, the master thinker, the disciplined thinker, and rather than the seeker of truth, the knower of truth, the perceiver of truth. Now, this king is skillful at handling words and concepts, which is something that we were asked to be able to do, to use our wit, to use our noble demeanor to win people over in the larger spread. That's part of this as well, I think. The ability to use the mind, to handle words, concepts, to communicate well, to go beyond thought. The king is not trapped in thought. The king can go beyond thought into the unknown. The king is able to explore the unknown. Not in such an adventurous way as a knight might, but in the way a king would be able to do. Which is also important or significant because the first and main card of this week's spread was a fire card, but was also a king. Now we have the King of Wands and the Page of Wands joining together as the initial divine light entering this week's larger spread. So this king appearing here is significant. So in our kingly way of going into the unknown, supervising our thought and putting it into action. So what kind of thought? What's on this king's mind? What is this king's superpower? Because there are different kinds of ways of thinking of thought. There are breakthrough thoughts, there are clever thoughts, there are choosing thoughts. What kind of thoughts are on this king's mind? And the kind of thoughts that are on this king's mind, this king's superpower, I think, is the Eight of Swords. So you see the 8 swords there giving a very tight space, but in that tight space, there is a very powerful, strong, clear, vibrant flower filling that space to capacity. This is not a flower that is wilting and weak. There's not enough space for me. This is a flower that is filling the space that is available to it. And it has how many points? I believe it has 8 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, an 8-pointed star in an 8-numbered card. So it matches its position perfectly in its 8-ness. Remember the 8-ness of the lemniscate. So this is what's on the king's mind. It's clarity. It's expanded into intelligence and intuition. It's expanded intelligence and finding our intuition, which was also one of the key points of advice from this week's larger spread. It's listen to the voice of intuition from within. Well, here we go. That's what's on the king's mind. It's mind not identifying with concepts. Yeah, the mind is able to think the thoughts but not get attached to them, like the King of Swords is able to do. Powerful concentration. External concentration, but also deeply meditative states are indicated here as well. So the king can move into the unknown. That unknown can be an external unknown, but it could also be a dive within to the internal unknown. The unknown realms within, from which our intuition springs. The king in this card is able to discover solutions to problems, and they become obvious beyond reasoning. Those intuitive moments of clarity of that's the solution is here. Non-thought from which brilliance arises. That's what's on this king's mind. So the king, being able to do all of that, is able to manifest, is able to enter the world, Which is interesting because what is the card after the world? It's the Fool, which was what we were moving into. We were reminded that we were helped to understand that we have the potential to manifest, to incarnate the Fool for ourselves. And how do we incarnate the Fool? Well, first we transition through the world to incarnate the Fool, to realize the full potential that we are now ready to access. But first we got to get through the world, and here we are getting through the world. The king is able to get through the world. Completion, fulfillment, happy outcomes, and success. Which is a little bit part of this week's spread of harvests, right? Wisdom, unity, and realization of our potential is also indicated here. Also, realization of our spiritual androgyny. We realize that here, and then we become it in the Fool. Now, we enter the cosmic egg here so that we can emerge as the Fool. And again, we can incarnate the Fool for ourselves. This is the ultimate perfection, maximal expansion, from which that singularity can, I don't know if that makes sense to you. We've got that maximal expansion that can, in an instant, become the singularity which is the beginning of a new universe. That's here too. Something new is ready to be born here. So this is, again, a transition into the Fool. Through all of this wonderful stuff, cosmic eggs, maximal expansion, ultimate perfection, we're here, we've arrived. And it's time for that expansion to come back to infinite potential. As we get ready as we transition into the dry way of ascension. As we get ready to embody our foolness. Not foolishness, but our foolness. Our Fool. Does that make sense? So that's, use the brain, but not analytically so much, but skillfully, with finesse, words, concepts, but also looking within, exploring the unknown outside, but also inside, with gratitude. And then we can move through this to become the Fool. The creative, infinite potential Fool. If that makes sense, let me know in the comments below. If it does not make sense, let me know in the comments below. I'd really love to hear from you. And friends, starting next week, I've mentioned this in another video, but starting next week, I'm going to add an oracle card to my Tarot de Marseille readings. I've gotten one oracle deck that I've decided will pair beautifully with Tarot de Marseille and Antique Italian decks. So I'm going to start using that in my TDM readings starting next week. So get excited and ready for that. If you're new here, hit the thumbs up button so that YouTube knows that you got something out of this and it will draw eyes to the channel. Hit the alarm bell, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and hit the alarm bell so you get notifications of when I upload videos. And really, comment below. I'd love to hear from you. What do you think of this deck? Did that reading make sense? Do you see how this week's reading related to the larger spread and how powerful they both are together? If you let me know. And if you want a reading from me, my email address is below. thehangedmaninthemoon@gmail.com. Shoot me an email. We'll get you a reading. Tarot de Marseille, Smith Waite, Continental Tarot, Thoth, whatever. Choose a system or don't choose a system. Just let me know. We'll work it out together. Long, short, whatever you want. Okay? So friends, thank you very much for coming with me on this journey. And as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.